Please, this is not an order. If you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe our channel for more comments and discussions. The murder stories all seem weirder than each other. Whenever a murder story comes up, people are surprised by its cruelty or its motive. Criminals can in no way be forgiven for their misdeeds even if their actions are justified. In this video, we are going to talk about a murder case that is a bit out of the ordinary. It is the story of a woman who conspired with a pastor to kill her husband. What is most shocking in this story is that during the funeral of the murdered man, the pastor, who was the victim's best friend and also his murderer, shamelessly gave an emotional speech to show people his sadness at the death of his friend. This murder case concerns Teresa Stone, who was 40 years old at the time of the events, and Pastor David Love. David had killed his best friend Randy Stone, who was Teresa's husband, only to collect his life insurance, which was worth over $800,000. Pastor David was Teresa's lover, and she dreamed of being able to run away with him and live an amazing life. Her husband, Randy, was a former Marine, so she knew his life insurance was going to be worth a fortune. So she conspired with her lover to get rid of her current husband and lead the life of her dreams. The most touching thing about this story is that she had no mercy in killing her husband after they had been married for 19 years. Teresa Stone, as well as Pastor David, were guilty not only of murder but also of treason. They betrayed their best friend and husband just for money and had no shame in killing him. Teresa absolutely wanted to continue her life with David, no matter the price. Because of her fantasies, she not only ruined her life but also that of her children, Michael and Miranda, who became orphans after she was incarcerated. She hoped to have a better life by killing her husband, but her life became a horror after she was accused of murder and sentenced to prison. For the cruelty shown by David and Teresa, the judge sentenced them to the most severe sentence for their crime. Teresa Stone's actions were unforgivable because they were inhumane. She did not directly kill her husband but took on Pastor David as a hitman in order to earn the life insurance money. So, she gave David access to Randy's personal weapon stash so he could quickly commit his murder, and then, without any remorse, she let him preside over her husband's funeral. How can a person be heartless and have no remorse after committing murder? She plotted to kill her husband without thinking of her children or the consequences of her crime. You should know that the murder of Randy Stone took place on March 31, 2010 his insurance office, and that Teresa Stone and David Love were convicted only in 2012, 2 years later. Randy Stone had been found shot dead, and police immediately concluded his case was a homicide as no items or money had been stolen to make it believed to be a robbery that turned into murder. The investigation into this murder case has revealed some very shocking secrets. Before talking about these secrets, we will explain how Randy and Teresa met. Randy and Teresa were childhood friends who grew up in the same town, which is Kansas City, located in Missouri. During their late teens, they lost touch for a few years because Randy had joined the Marines, but then he came back, and they decided to get married. Randy had returned from the Marines in early 1990, and they were married a few months later. Several of Randy's friends have claimed that he adores his wife and does anything to please her. Whenever he had to go away for work, he constantly called her to check on her. Hearing this, we think it's sad to see how their relationship ended. The couple had married at the New Hope Baptist Church and even baptized their child there. Randy was described by all his acquaintances as a good person who only worked to help others. He rendered services to everyone and contributed a lot to the development and well-being of the church. His mother claimed in an interview that he helped the church with its financial problems, taught classes on Sundays, and was even the church's financial minister. It turns out Teresa was also helping out with a number of church chores, like cooking meals and singing in the choir. 2 years after their marriage, they already had a son and a daughter. Teresa did not work and only took care of the children, while Randy ran his own insurance business. His business was successful, and he was very popular in the small town where he lived. Teresa and Randy, both devout Christians, attended the same church. David Love was a pastor who joined the church at the age of 38. He was highly appreciated by members of the community because he brought innovative ideas concerning the management of the church. He offered advice to anyone who asked for his opinion and was open to any advice he was given. Teresa sat in on all the sessions he gave at church and therefore saw him 3 times a week. During the investigation undertaken by the police, it was discovered that there was a bizarre element concerning Teresa's third pregnancy. In 2004, she claimed she was pregnant when, shortly before, Randy had undergone a vasectomy, which was a procedure preventing him from having children. Despite this, he did not doubt Teresa, and he continued to believe that the child was indeed his. Unfortunately, Teresa had a miscarriage, and therefore the child could not be born. During the period following this unfortunate event, Teresa was greatly depressed and sad to have lost a child. To fill her sadness, she turned to the pastor of the David Church and asked him for advice. At first, she followed his sessions 3 times a week, and then she began to do sessions for advice every day. Randy loved Teresa dearly, and he was desperate when he saw her going away from him. He looked around for advice on how to improve his relationship with his wife, and he too turned to Pastor David Love. Randy met him every day and explained all his problems to him. For him, David was his best friend and also his confidant, who listened to his stories and thought with him about effective solutions. Randy and David had a good relationship until 2010. As Randy had his own insurance business, he took care of the finances of the church. Once, while inspecting the church books, he discovered that funds were lacking and that someone had shamefully dipped into church funds for their own personal gain. He was surprised to discover that it was David Love who had committed this unforgivable act and had cut off all relations with him. Randy did not want to report his ex-best friend and therefore sent him an email explaining that he did not agree with the way he took for his personal account funds intended for the church. He did not seek to report him to the police or the deacons of the church, he simply resigned from his position as finance minister of the church. Because of this problem, Randy decided not to take his family to this church anymore. Unfortunately, sometime later, he was found dead in his office. His wife, Teresa, had called the emergency services and told them that she had found her husband with a lot of blood in his head. Several people rushed to the scene of the crime, and one of the members of the neighborhood even called David Love to find out about the incident when he was the culprit of the murder. At that time, no one could imagine that a pastor so respected and loved by people could have committed such an atrocious act with the help of the victim's wife, who seemed completely devastated by the death of her husband. A .40 caliber casing was found at the crime scene, and investigators immediately claimed it was murder. While searching the garbage cans off the victim's home, investigators found a torn letter intended for Teresa that contained strange phrases. One of the sentences stated that when they are fully together, they will be able to enjoy her birthday even better, and that this will happen after the sender is able to control things. Investigators compared the letter's handwriting with Randy's and found no matches. At the funeral, hundreds of people were present, including detectives, when Pastor David Love gave the eulogy. The detectives had filmed the funeral because they thought the culprit might be among the people present, and they weren't wrong. However, they were far from imagining that the priest who gave a moving speech that broke the heart and showed his affection for his deceased friend could be the murderer. The first person to be interviewed during the investigation is Teresa Stone. Teresa provided an alibi that proved where she was and what she was doing at the time of the murder. She gave the exact hour and minute she was at a specific location, and it sounded like she was reciting a script already prepared. Investigators had begun to suspect that the gun that was used belonged to Randy, which was intriguing. They checked Randy's belongings and discovered that a gun was missing. When they asked Teresa about this, she couldn't give them a coherent answer. The police questioned Teresa about the letter they found, and she claimed it was a letter of admiration that she received and then tore up so Randy wouldn't see it. Due to a lack of evidence, Teresa was released by the police, but this didn't last long. She did not remain discreet when she was suspected of being involved in the murder of her husband. One of Randy's friends working in the insurance industry told investigators that Teresa contacted him less than a day after the murder to provide information about her husband's life insurance. This life insurance amounted to more than $800,000 and therefore consisted of a colossal sum. He was shocked when she asked him how long it would take for her to receive the money, as her husband's mourning had just begun. Moreover, during the investigation, the police discovered the affair between Teresa Stone and David Love, which was not really secret since several people had noticed it. After discovering this, investigators were able to establish a possible motive for the crime. The only people who had a solid, well-prepared alibi on the day of the murder were Teresa Stone and David Love, so this seemed extremely suspicious. Teresa had to be interrogated again because new evidence against her had been found. The police questioned her about her relationship with Pastor David Love, and she eventually admitted that they had been having an affair for more than 10 years. In other words, she was cheating on her husband for 10 years when he loved her very much and trusted her. During interrogation, she also admitted that her third child, who did not survive, was actually David's and claimed that the culprit of her husband's murder was David Love. She explained to the police that David entered her husband's office and shot without looking before fleeing. After this confession, a search warrant on the pastor's home was established, and the investigators found all the evidence of their affair. They found several photos and emails that clearly showed their relationship. Pastor Love could only be arrested 8 months after Randy's murder. At his trial in November 2011, David Love entered a plea deal for second-degree murder. His act was so cruel and treacherous that the judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole until 2036. Teresa was accused of conspiring with David to carry out a murder, but she entered a plea agreement to have her sentence reduced. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison because she admitted her role in the murder of Randy Stone. The family of the victim and that of the murderer are now doing their best to move on and forget this horrific incident. Moreover, at the New Hope Baptist Church, a new pastor has been hired, and he is getting along very well with the community. The people hope that they will continue to live peacefully and that they will not suffer any more incidents like this. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more reviews and discussions. Thank you for watching.